the journey to 5G. So we will see where we started, where we are right now, and what are the technological advances behind each of the generations. Then we will compare 5G with 4G. So what is the key difference in terms of technology is what we will see in comparing with 4G. Then we will also see like where we will head with 5G in this year as well as in 2025. And we will also see what is the usage forecast. What is this 5G being used, and what people will do with 5G. So that's what we will see in usage forecast. So journey to 5G, you can clearly see from 1980s to 2020s, it is a 40 years of mobile network evolution. So every generation takes at least 10 years. So the 10 years of time is to kind of come up with the network technologies, roll out that network technologies in the market, and it is getting adopted in the market as well. And then finally it gets industrialized to both consumer as well as industries. So it takes minimum of at least 10 years for a generation to mature and get complete use of those technologies. And it all started with the 1980s. Prior to that, 1980s, we all had landlines in our houses. I think even now some of us, we do have that. It is usually placed in the middle of the veranda with a telephone tied to a long cable. And reason for that is you can take and roam into any room with the long wire attached to it. So those were the days before 1980s. As I said, of course, we do have that telephones even now. But in 1980, exactly 1982, the first generation of mobile networks was introduced. That is mainly based on analog voice. And analog voice also it's mainly towards human-to-human interfacing. The reason for saying human-to-human is we have switched from human-to-human to a different set of interfacing altogether currently in 5G. And that's why it's very clearly mentioning that it is a human-to-human interfacing. So those days, 1980s, the first mobiles were introduced in the market. Of course, when it comes to India, we are always lagging behind by 5 to 10 years. So even in 1980s, we wouldn't have got the mobile. Maybe towards 1990s, we got the first mobile phones into India. But first G, it was mainly focusing on analog voice. Then 2G got introduced. Of course, everybody knows 2G in India for different reasons, both good and bad. But we will not go into that. Here we will see the technology behind 2G. The major difference between 1G and 2G is they converted the analog voice into digital voice, and they also introduced low-speed data to be transferred through the mobile networks. And this is where like we came across SMS, which is nothing but a small messaging service, and each one of us were excited to send SMS between each other. And those days, I know that it was very, very costly. Like to make a call, it was around 12 rupees for outgoing, and incoming was like around 6 rupees. Compared to what we are right now, I think it was all like a very, very high and unimaginable cost during those days. But we did have these phones rolling out in the market. The Nokia and others were very prominent during that time. All those phones got rolled out in 1990s. Then people thought, okay, now we have the low-speed data where we can exchange the SMSs. Then why not we browse the internet as well through the mobile network? And that's when the 3G got introduced. And in the 3G, they simply switched to mobile broadband as well, which means people were able to use the browsers and access the internet through mobile itself. And prior to that, we all had the dial-up modems at home, and it takes a hell of a lot of time to connect to the network, and it was extremely slow as well. And yeah, even in mobile, when 3G was introduced, it was not high speed, but at least you can keep roaming, and you can keep accessing the internet over the mobile. And I still remember in 2003 when I moved to Sweden, I also bought a 3G phone, not knowing what exactly I should be using that for. But then I was using it mainly for the voice and texting for several years without knowing the real concept behind the 3G. And of course, it was also not deployed in the market very heavily at that time. So though I bought the phone, it wasn't. It was unusable because the MMS and it's called mobile messaging service with pictures and other things were not prominent across the telecom operators. So towards the end of 2010, we had the 4G introduced in the market. 4G is simply nothing but very high speed of 3G, where we had the faster network, faster bandwidth and other things. And also they switched to IP-based network, which means you can connect any device to the mobile network. And that's when all these tablets and other things got introduced, where you can put a SIM card within the tablet and phone, and it will automatically connect to the mobile network, and it will have its own IP. And this is also time when we had the laptops being ramping up and the desktops also going down. So some of the laptops also came up with the SIM card capability, where you don't have to connect to any broadband, landline broadband. You can simply connect to a mobile network directly. And that's the concept behind tablets as well. And now the tablets are becoming very, very popular with 3G enabled, 4G enabled. So we got the high-speed internet, and those were the days where the apps also got developed in 2010. And that was also the time we had the iPhones introduced in the market, and all the smartphones came into picture. So the moment they thought, okay, now it's switching from laptop to mobile devices and desktop to mobile devices, people started developing that technology to a greater extent. And now we are in 2020s, and now in 20s we had been talking about 5G for a few years now. Currently, the 5G is getting deployed across the world. It's ramping up in a great pace. There is a big difference between all the generations and 5G. In 5G, we are promoting machine-to-machine communication. So in 1980s in 1G, we saw it's a human-to-human mobile communication. But in 2020s in 5G, the main focus will be the machine-to-machine communication. So you might be wondering what machines will be doing, what will they be talking to each other, and that's where the IoT comes into picture. So the machines will automatically talk to each other and take a call based on the current situation of the sensors that are placed in the devices and so on, so things. So though along with human interfacing, the machine-to-machine becomes very prominent. At the same time, 5G comes with great speed compared to 4G. We will see that in the next slide. It's extremely faster, and why we are going to 5G is reduce certain latency and so on, so things. And also we got the IoT concept, and IoT is mainly going towards consumers, governments, and business as well. So this is the journey to 5G starting from 1980s to 2020s. It's a 40 years of journey, but it is a great leap, and there is no looking back now. So that's how the 5G is placed right now. So moving on to 4G versus 5G, you can clearly see the download speed. It's in 4G, it's only like 10 MB per second. This is using the mobile network. But please don't mix with the landline broadband. Landline broadband is all connected by fiber cable, and they have a different speed. All we're talking about here is the mobile network, which means the portable network where you can roam with the device anywhere. And here the speed that we are talking about is 10 MB in 4G, and in 5G we are talking about close to 10 times or 1000% increase, which is like 100 MB per second. That is the download speed actually. And you should see that it is the B is the capital B. It's not bits, it's a byte, which means it's like 1,000 times more than the bits. So the speed is extremely fast. Now they're not only us, even the younger generation, they are very restless in terms of downloading something. You try to download something and it doesn't download quickly. We become impatient and restless. So the speed, the 5G, the speed that it will bring is going to be like a tremendous compared to the previous generations. The next is the latency. What is meant by latency is the first response after you hit the enter. The time between the first response till the time it reaches your mobile is the latency. And the latency plays a big part in gaming industry and other places, wherein, like, for example, if I speak now and if you don't hear what I speak immediately, then that means that it has a big latency. So 4G has a 10 millisecond. 4G itself, it's a very like a minor latency, 10 milliseconds, but 5G comes with 1 millisecond, which means it is almost like real time. So you will not feel any lag between what is happening on the other side of the world to you. So you will almost see like it's happening in real time, and that's the technology behind 5G in latency part. And when it comes to bandwidth, based on the diagram itself, you can clearly see that the 4G has 100 megahertz and 5G has 1000 megahertz. And megahertz is nothing but it looks like a pipe, right? So it is the data amount of data that you can pump in within the what is the network is what is the bandwidth. And 5G, of course, if you see both download latency as well as in bandwidth, it is 5G is like extremely faster and bigger when it comes to all these technologies. So overall, it is going to bring a very big difference compared to all the generations prior to this. And prior to this, it was like a very, very stepwise increase, but this is a big leap compared to 4G. And in this slide, you see where we will be with respect to 5G by end of this year, and where we will be by 2025. So this is coming out of Ericsson's June mobility report, wherein they clearly specified that by end of 2020, we will have 190 million 5G subscriptions. So the 5G is ramping up in a great pace across the world. So this will be like around 200 million subscriptions towards end of 2020. And by 2025, we will have 2.8 billion 5G subscriptions, which is like 12 times more than where we are right now in the next 5 years. And here also we can clearly see that there is a ramp down in other technologies like 3G, 2G, and all other the protocols like CDMA. CDMA is going down drastically in the next 5 years. And even the 4G, you can see it is slowly ramping down, but at the same time, everybody will be switching to 5G because of the technology that it brings in. Around 75%, 75 service providers, they already switched to 5G, which means they have enabled 5G in their network. We will see the network deployment a little bit later around the world, how it is being deployed. But right now, at least 75 operators, they have adopted and providing 5G services for both the consumers as well as the industries. Yeah, that's about how it will look like in 2025 when it comes to 5G. Okay, this is something interesting that, yeah, it gives an interesting fact in terms of what people will be using this 5G for in 2025 as well as now. If you see the chart, it clearly shows that people will be using this mainly for videos. And you might be wondering, like, what is people doing with the videos? And the traffic within this 5G as well as in the network, mobile network, will be mainly the video part. Of course, we will also have social networking, web browsing, audio, and some sort of software downloads, file sharing part. But those are like, it's only like 25% compared to what we are talking about in terms of video traffic. And in the video traffic, so if you see like what are the main drivers when it comes to video traffic, so you might be wondering like what are we doing with the video? So if you see in the video part, just go to any web page and you will already see some sort of video embedded into the web page. And when you try to see the video or when you try to download the video, then it becomes a part of the mobile traffic, the video mobile traffic. That is even just on the plain static web pages. Of course, the static web pages will not have more traffic. The size of the web page will be very, very minimal. The moment you add the video and content into the web page, then it becomes a bit heavy. And then the next one is the YouTube. These are the main drivers. If you see the YouTube, everybody knows YouTube. The loads of data or the video gets pumped into YouTube almost every single day. Now, if you see even the news channels and others, they are starting all the YouTube channels and they are going for live streaming, and they are sharing all the videos so you can watch whenever you want. So these video sharing services will play a bigger part in terms of mobile traffic when it comes to video traffic. And then there are popular things happening now. The video streaming services like Netflix, Amazon, and even in India, the Hotstar and other apps are becoming very, very popular. People are talking about even releasing the movies in Netflix going forward. So which means we will have a very, very high demand for these applications, and that will also induce mobile traffic in terms of video. And I don't know how much of you know about like Netflix and Amazon. So initially we had been talking about the SD videos, which is nothing but standard definition videos, wherein the quality is a bit low, but the size of the video file is also a bit low compared to like, you know, other formats. So then people thought, okay, now the quality is not so good. Then what do we do now? So let's increase the quality in terms of format. So they went into full HD. I think some of you might have bought the smart TVs with the full HD. Now people are talking about 4K. So what happened is Netflix and Amazon and other video streaming services, they started creating video content in 4K with extremely high quality. And anything with high quality comes with the cost of, you know, increase in the size of the video files. So the file that was like around 1 GB in the standard definition will become 10 to 15 GBs in like 4K. And now even when the people went further to 8K videos, and the 8K videos are like almost 50 GB. So the same video that you saw in 1 GB is going to be 50 GB, which means you will be downloading 50 GB of data when you see that video or like a documentary or a news through Netflix or Amazon. So that is going to be a bigger part, and these streaming services is going to drive the network traffic, mobile network traffic. And yes, it is not only like the landlines which are connected to the wires. People want to see Netflix, Amazon, wherever they go. So they take the devices along with them, and then they connect to the mobile network and watch all these videos. And changing user behavior is also one of the main drivers for these videos. Nowadays, people, you know, they don't read much like before. The books also, like, you know, the sales of the books also is going a little bit down. One reason for that is everybody wants to quickly watch a video and get the content of the video or get the concept behind the one that they are looking for. So there is a big change in the user behavior as well. And I think you all might can relate it very well with your cases at home and how we change the behaviors. And evolving devices. Devices also coming up with very high potential now in terms of speed and in terms of, for example, the screens in the devices are very, very high quality now. Like you can see very crystal clear images in the devices. And that also like is a kind of a main driver for using videos over devices. And then increased network performance. Of course, when the network performance is very high, then people tend to use mobile traffic more. So if the network performance is down, for example, if we can't do this session over a webinar, then of course we will stop this. But since the performance is overall, it's pretty good, we are going ahead with the webinar like this. And even this webinar, though it's like you see a static screen, it's almost like a video streaming coming from Microsoft Teams actually. And then emerging immersive media formats and applications. So this emerging immersive media is nothing but you know, the virtual reality and the gaming area, where each one play games over internet, and they want to have a real-time experience. And when they play games, then it's most of the times it's a video. So overall, if you see, video is going to play a bigger part in the mobile traffic, and that these are the main drivers behind that. So with this, we end the 5G topic. So we saw the journey to 5G. We compared 5G with 4G, and then we saw where we will be in 2025. And then we also saw like what are the main usage of 5G. Next, we will get into IoT, and IoT is the Internet of Things. So in IoT, we will see what is IoT first, Internet of Things, what is Internet of Things. And then we will see the architecture and applications behind Internet of Things, how it is built, what is the framework. Protocols and range. I thought it's better to give a good view on what are the protocols. You might be aware of some of the protocols, but you may not know what exactly the key difference between these protocols and why we are using those protocols and how it impacts the IoT area. Nothing comes without challenges. Even IoT, we have challenges and limitations as of now, but we will see what are the key challenges and limitations and how we can overcome those in the coming years. And towards the end, we will see the IoT network deployment. So how are we deployed, means how the network have been deployed across the world to cater to the IoT needs is what we will see, and where are we maturing and where we are still lagging behind also we will see in the network deployment. So going into what is IoT, IoT is nothing but it is Internet of Things, referring to billions of physical devices connected to the internet. And the purpose behind connecting to the internet is sharing data between these devices. And this is where we talked about machine-to-machine communication. The need for a new network technology so that the individual devices placed across can talk to each other. So the concept is the Internet of Things is nothing but like a network of things. Things are the devices that are placed around the world. So these devices range from ordinary household devices to very, very sophisticated devices in the industries, factories, then even in the mining area, agriculture, so on, so things. And I can give a typical example of these devices and how these devices work. Actually, right now I'm in Sweden and I come to India like once in a year and I be there in India for like a month or so. Then what I do is I just have a security camera within my house, which is monitoring my house non-stop. And I also have an app that is connected to the camera. So when I come to India, I just enable everything. And I can keep a watch on my like a mobile app, what is happening within my house. I think some of you also might be having in India as well, like you just have a camera in the house. And of course, it is not like CCTV where you are statically connected within the house and you see what is happening within the house. But here I'm talking about like the device is connected to the internet, and then you see the video and other things over the internet in a different part of the world. Of course, I can't do anything if somebody breaks into the house sitting there in Pollachi or somewhere else. But all I can do is I can just like immediately alert the police, or I can call someone here in Sweden just to have an eye on my house. But at least that way I just get an idea that something is happening in the house, rather than I come back after 1 month and see the whole house is empty. That will be altogether a different scenario. And if you see like the devices, it ranges from consumer devices to different set of industrial devices. So there are so many devices in place, and everything is connected to the internet. And this whole internet of connected devices is called Internet of Things. So what is the architecture behind this Internet of Things? IoT World Forum came up with the reference model. People started developing applications in their own way. So they thought we have to regulate this, and then we have to clearly define the reference model for the IoT architecture. And if you see towards there are 7 key layers within this reference model. And you can see on the bottom, you can see it is edge, and top you can see center. Edge is nothing but it is completely outside of the network within your the boundary. The devices are placed in the edge area. It's like it can be camera, it can be any other sensor devices, and it is working, or it is very close to the customer, consumer, or the event that it has to monitor. So these are mainly like outside of the network. And then the next one you have is the connectivity. Of course, the devices are very dumb. Then how do you connect those devices to the internet? This is where all the connectivity and communication and all other protocols play a bigger role. And then third layer is the edge computing layer, where you convert the machine readable images, messages into meaningful messages. And then the fourth layer is data accumulation. So after reading the messages from the devices through the connectivity, then you accumulate that in a storage like a database or something like that. And then if you see, the fifth layer is the data abstraction. So why we need data abstraction is in the data accumulation layer, there will be loads of data pumped into it, and all the data doesn't make any sense. For example, if I'm measuring a temperature of a certain thing over a period of time, all I'm interested in is when the temperature goes down. Rather than, I just, for example, if I keep getting a temperature as 21 degrees for 5 days, I'm not interested in that. But the moment it goes down to like 10 degree, or it goes up to like 40 degree, I'm interested in that. So the data abstraction is kind of cleansing the data that is accumulated and kind of making it sense for the applications. Then when we talk about applications, we have the next layer, the application layer, so which uses the data that is being pumped in from the devices all the way to the data abstraction layer. And the applications also like give an indication or alert or events based on the data business rules that are set. And in the collaboration layer, it is all about the people, process, and what do they do with this data. Of course, if I get an alert and if I don't do anything, then I don't do any collaboration with the technology. So if I take an action, so if I see that someone jumped into my house and then I alert police, then that's the collaboration layer. It's like a layer where you take a call on the data that you got. So these 7 layers are broadly classified into 4 different categories. So first one is it's a very clear, there is no ambiguity here. So first one is the physical devices, which is towards the edge. Second is the connectivity. Third is the data processing, and fourth is the application layer. So where like we have the mathematics coming into play is also on the data accumulation and data abstraction part. So when you accumulate like loads and loads of data, how you make sense out of data is where mathematics play a very, very bigger role. Without mathematics and without applying all the theories in the mathematics, I don't think the data will make any sense for any of the applications. So it's a bigger area for anyone who is interested in doing research. Of course, there are many researches happening around that area. So it's if you want to pick up something in that area, it's a very growing area. So you can maybe get into that and see like if you can contribute something there. So this is the IoT architecture and the reference model. Moving on to the IoT applications are broadly classified into 2 major categories: consumer application and industrial application. Of course, consumer, we clearly know it is all the household things. I can give one funny example, or I can say a typical example. They are talking about even connected fridges here, okay, in Sweden. So wherein like when you the fridge will be connected to the internet, it will have a sensor within that, where it will kind of even calculate like how many tomatoes you have within the fridge, and when the tomato count goes down, it will automatically send an order to your regular regular grocery store where you usually order the tomatoes, and they will simply send the like a kilogram of a tomato to your house parking area, and they will have a freezer there, and you will have an app where you can go and scan it and pick it up, or you can simply go there, or if you don't pick it up after a certain time, it will automatically get cancelled. So these type of consumer applications they are talking about. Of course, you might be wondering like why we need all those things, but that is how the future is. It is going to be like that, so we can't avoid that, and it is going in a greater pace towards this type of applications. And then we can see like some of the wearables, phones, TVs, everything connected, everything becoming smart. And then the household appliances, like as I talked, it's home monitoring, home automation, and even I think we also saw some applications in terms of the appliances like a microwave and other things being connected to the IoT area. So when it comes to industrial applications, actually it's mainly IoT is mainly focusing on the industrial applications. All the factories, if you see, they are getting automated through several sensors and several devices within the factories. And in the healthcare area, they are trying to track the devices. We also did a quick pre-study, and we presented our use case on the healthcare part. Since we had this COVID and there was a need to share ventilators and other things across hospitals, we went ahead and did a study with the hospital with the region in Sweden where there are like hundreds of hospitals, and we spoke to the logistics manager, and he clearly indicated that there is a need to put devices on these big equipments to track where they are and if they are used or not. And based on that, they want to automatically initiate the transfer of these equipments to the places where they need, if it is not used in one of the hospitals. And this use case also got selected in the top 10 use cases that we presented out of 250 use cases. So overall, if we see there is a big need for IoT in the industrial applications. And when it comes to transportation, now you see everything is connected, like Volvo and other companies, all their trucks, Scania, the biggest trucking companies, their trucks are always connected. Everybody knows where exactly the truck is, and then where it is roaming around in the world. And even they can get info about the maintenance of the trucks. So they simply send a message saying your truck has to be quickly brought for repair because there is a part that is kind of wearing out or something like that. And when it comes to logistics, it is used for tracking packages. And I had been working in logistics area for the last 3 years, doing certain use cases in the IoT area. And these use cases are very, very important because when they send out things to the installation sites, they also send certain engineers to work on it. And if the packages don't arrive on time, it's a waste of time for everyone. So they want to track all the packages within the logistics industry. And in mining, they want to operate the big machines sitting outside the mine. Actually, they didn't want to go into the mine because it's very dark and it's very dangerous. So they send robot-like machines, and they operate those robots sitting outside. So for those robots, if you want to operate, then you need to have all the devices in place, smart sensoring, lighting, and other things. And in agriculture also, there are major use cases, measuring pH value of soil, etc. So these are major IoT applications. So this is a very, very growing area. So if you want to check on it, it's a good time to check on some of these use cases. Can someone confirm if you can hear me well?
Yes, sir, you're clear. Your presentation is clear. You can continue.
Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am. Okay, next is on the protocol and the range. You all know the protocols that are there available in the market, like Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. So, but maybe you may not know the clear difference between what is Bluetooth and what is Wi-Fi and all other protocols that we use on a day-to-day basis. So if you see, the protocols are classified into 4 or 5 different ranges. If you see, there are something even very short range, and in very short range we have this NFC. NFC is a near field communication, which is less than 2 centimeters is what the range of this protocol. And you might be wondering why I need this type of protocol unnecessarily. What am I going to do with less than 2 centimeters? So if some of you have a very good smartphone, you can check in your mobile if you have NFC enabled. The NFC is used for the payment gateways. So if you enable NFC and if you enable like a Google Pay or Apple Pay, then you can use your mobile phone to do the payments when you go to the groceries. And these are available here in Sweden. I just keep the mobile phone on the scanning device, and it immediately senses and it reduces the money, and then the bill gets paid automatically. And these NFCs has to work within very short range. It should not work 20 meters or something like that. Then somebody will pull the money out of your pocket without you even knowing. So that's why we need this very short range protocols as well in place, wherein it will only work within very, very minimal range, like 1 centimeter or 2 centimeter. But we are not going to talk more about that. But what we will focus on is the short range. Short range is less than 10 meters. And the typical protocol typical application here is mainly the wristband, the smartwatch, and the keyboard and mouse. Some of you might be using the Bluetooth keyboards and Bluetooth mouses in your house. So they are mainly like, they will work only less than 10 meter. And even I think the remotes are like some of the remote controls for the TV are Bluetooth. So if you try to take it away, like 10 meters away from the TV, it may not work. So that is the reason behind that is protocols range is the Bluetooth range is only like less than 10 meter. And even in this, there are two different variations. One is for the content distribution, and the other is for sense and control. Content distribution is mainly like sending a high amount of data, but sense and control is mainly for the IoT part, where you have the low range and low energy and low battery. So I will not go like too much detail into all the protocols, but you clearly see like for a short range Bluetooth local area, which is less than 100 meters, is Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi can work 100 meters. So if you have a very good router in your house, you can just try to check how far it works. So if you have a very powerful router, it will work at least like 50 to 100 meters for sure. And there are proprietary protocols as well, which are promoted by individual companies, but we will not go into that. And then when it comes to wide area, this is where we are talking about the 5G. You see LTE-M is a long-term evolution mobile networks, and NB-IoT is narrowband IoT. So these are two major protocols that are getting rolled out across the world. And there are very popular protocol in the proprietary solutions as well. LoRa is a low-range wide area network protocol, and Sigfox is also very, very famous. So these are the things that are being used right now within the IoT area. And when it comes to challenges, yes, there are very big challenges right now in 2020, but it may go away very soon. So when it comes to network, there are no roaming agreement between the network operators. Right now, when you take your mobile phone, go to country, and then automatically switches to the network, you will not even notice that it switched to the next network, because they have a very clear agreement. They will switch the networks automatically. But right now, that is not in place. And also network deployment has not happened all over the world. That is another thing. And then when it comes to devices, the cost of the device is very high right now, like $50 to $100, which is very, very high. And the battery life is also very low. Now people are like asking for 10 years of battery life. So when they put a device, they don't want to check the device for next 10 years. But it also depends on like how much of data that you are going to send out of the devices. So that device cost is pretty high. So that also is a big time challenge right now. And then when it comes to data, in IoT, massive amount of data is generated, and interpreting the data is a big time challenge. Everybody says, yeah, we have IoT, we have data, but we don't know what to do with the data. Then it becomes useless actually. And then investment versus return on investment. That's another thing. Like people try to invest some money in IoT area, but they don't get the returns for what they have invested, mainly due to the driving factors like device cost and the network rollout have not happened across the world. So it is you can use within Sweden, and the moment you go to some other country, immediately it becomes useless. So these are the challenges, but it is these challenges will be addressed very, very quickly, and very soon we will see the wide spread rollout of IoT applications. So this is the network deployment status. It is coming from GSMA organization. So if you see North America, you can see that both the NB-IoT and the LTE-M network had been rolled out, and they are like forefront in the 5G and the IoT area. And even in Sweden, you see, like you can clearly see that it is only we have NB-IoT, and the other the protocol is getting rolled out very soon now. And India, as I said, we are a little bit lagging. It's always like that. So maybe in 5 to 10 years, we will also have that. So this is the biggest challenge actually. It is not rolled out across the world. So when you try to send one device from North America to India, it will only work till the North America border, and then it will not work after that. So which means it becomes useless if you try to track a logistic package that is being sent from US to India. Yeah, so there are some minor differences between CATM and mobile. CATM is mainly used for the mobile part, which means you can just use the devices in roaming. But NB-IoT is very, very static. You cannot move the devices and it will not work, because the NB-IoT is tied to the cell network. and CATM is NB-IoT is radio, and CATM is the cellular. Okay, that is about the IoT. Now maybe we will get into quickly into mathematics in IoT. So mathematics in IoT, why we need that is, without mathematics, these things are very dumb. They are not smart. So mathematics makes things smart. And without that, you get loads of data without knowing what to do with the data. And mathematics brings all these theories like fuzzy theory, game theory, queuing theory, reliability, simulation in picture, and makes data meaningful for the people who are using the data. And I know the audience that I'm speaking is highly knowledgeable in this area, so I'm not going to go deeper into this. I'm going to be on the surface and at least give an idea where we use these theories. But each theory and application in itself is a research topic. So if you're interested, you can pick up one and try to do research on that. And it is very well welcomed in the IoT area. Yes, there are research departments doing mainly working only on this to find out how we can make a meaningful inference out of the data. Okay, let's get into some of the theories. We will only touch on a very broad level since we also have only 10 minutes now. Getting into fuzzy theory is nothing but when you have multi inputs with varying, it is not if you want to take a decision based on multi criteria and the inputs also is not a discrete input, it is a varying input. Then you have to use fuzzy theory in place to come up with the outcome, how can we get an inference out of the values that are continuously changing rather than discrete values. So for example, if you are measuring a temperature, humidity, and you are measuring over a location, and the location is also changing, temperature is changing, humidity is changing, and what do you do with this is something that fuzzy theory can help. So depending on the varying inputs, changing inputs, how do you take a decision based on that is what this theory helps with. I will not go deeper into this because it is not my expertise, I have to admit that, but there are people doing big time research in this area. So if you are really interested, you can check out for these researchers and you will get more inputs. And I know that some of you are really strong in these areas. And then game theory is used to choose the best available strategies from the available strategies to minimize the maximum loss or maximize the winnings in any game or war. Of course, we will not go for any war right now. So we will use these things for betterment of the people. So these theories, it is used to optimize work distribution in the IoT area. And also it is used to investigate multitasking and the data distribution in IoT. So this theory plays a bigger role in that. Moving on to the next theory, queuing theory. Queuing theory, I think everybody is very well aware of this. This is mainly used initially in the banks to address how they can handle people in the queue. And this is also a very big branch of mathematics that is used to estimate the average waiting time. And this is exactly used in IoT as well, how mainly on the electronic mail system using the intermail access protocol. So they are trying to see how they can regulate the queuing of these messages and the making use of those messages. And then reliability theory. Reliability is nothing but trying to understand when we try to take a decision or an outcome, is it really reliable based on the data that we got. And this is very important because you cannot take a decision something which is not reliable, which means it is completely useless. And these type of theories are used even in the medical area when they have the messages coming out of medical equipments, try to understand the outcome is reliable or not, so that they don't treat the patient in a bad way. Okay? Simulation, of course, simulation, everybody knows about simulation. You try to simulate the real world scenario using a computer. Just to understand much better how the things will behave in the real world without impacting the real world activities. And the example, clear example is, the pilot learning to land when there are issues in the flight. So this is simulated, and they simulate the exact scenario, making sure that the pilot lands properly, and then he learns how to land properly. So this one they cannot do it in real time. Of course, the pilot will die. So the simulations play a bigger role in many areas like this, and the IoT also, like used for a better understanding of for climate changes and other things. So that's all about the theories. Of course, there are many more theories in place which can be like of interest. So you can, for example, stochastic deterministic theories. So you can explore those theories as well, how mathematics helps in IoT. So here is the summary, almost towards the end of the session. So we saw what is 5G and its future, and we saw what is IoT and its applications, and also a bit of role of mathematics in IoT. I would like to play this, conclude the session by playing this video from Ericsson. I hope the audio works fine. Let me try. Can you hear the audio, madam, from the video?
Sir, no, sir. Only the video is played. Audio we cannot hear, sir.
Okay, madam. Because when I joined, it should ask for an option to play the audio, but I didn't get that option. So anyway, I will share the link of this video so you can watch the video. Yeah, it's a very nice audio, and not sure how to connect that. Yes, madam. Then I will, I will not play this video because without audio it doesn't make good sense. So I will conclude here, and not but least, I would like to thank Ericsson for allowing me to give this presentation. Mainly my manager Joss Van Berkel, who happily accepted for me giving this webinar to our elite community. Thanks to Ericsson Mobility Report, and yeah. This is a tough time with the COVID and other things. So please, everyone, stay healthy and stay safe. So yes, madam, I'm done with the presentation. So I'm open for any questions.
Okay. Thank you, sir. It was a nice presentation. You have clearly explained the technology and working mechanism behind 5G and Internet of Things. Thank you, sir. Participants, the session is open for interaction.
Hi, I am Karthik from Chennai. I have a basic question in IoT architecture. You are saying 7 layers, right? Here, why data abstraction layer comes after data accumulation? Why are you storing a lot of data? We store only valid data, right? So in data accumulation, we are storing large number of unwanted data. So if we store only limited data in abstraction layer, is it fine, right?
Yes, that is exactly correct. So for example, if you see the layer number 3, which is edge computing, that is not intelligent actually. What it all does is it pulls out all the data that is coming out of the connectivity layer, and it accumulates all the data into the accumulation layer. So where you like store every single data, because the edge computing is not very intelligent layer. That is just nothing but retrieving the information from the devices and pumping it into accumulation layer. And that is also reason we have an abstraction layer on top of accumulation, so that the accumulation layer, whatever the data you get, you just clean it and aggregate it and make it meaningful for the next layer. So it is a layer technology, and then the intelligence is not there in the edge computing, and that's why we have to accumulate all the data and then do a data cleansing after that. And also sometimes you may need all the data. It is not that you may only need some of the data sometime. So for example, if you want to do a prediction over a period of time, then irrespective of whether you need a small amount of data or not, you're going to store all the data. So sometimes I can check what is the trend for last 1 year rather than checking what is happening today. So that time there will be need for the data. So in that cases, what will happen is the data abstraction layer will have a clear business rules in picking up the data from the data accumulation layer. So there is a need for accumulation, as well as what you're saying is extremely correct. So there is a layer for that where you kind of make the data meaningful. That is in the data abstraction layer.
Yeah, thank you.
Participants, any other questions? So if there are no questions, then we can conclude the session, sir.
Okay, madam. Thank you, madam. Yeah.
Okay, sir. We'll have a formal vote of thanks, sir.
Yes, madam. Yeah.
I request Dr. S. Kalishwari, Assistant Professor of Mathematics, NGM College, Pollachi, to propose the vote of thanks.
Hello, am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear my voice? Okay,
Yes.
okay, thank you. It's my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks. I, on behalf of the Department of Mathematics, thank the eminent management of our college for encouraging us to conduct this international FTP. I must mention our deep sense of gratitude for our beloved principal, Dr. P.M. Palaniswamy sir, for constant appreciation to the Department of Mathematics. Thank you, sir. I may like to express our sincere thanks to the pioneer of our department, Dr. V. Indumati ma'am, Associate Professor and Head of the Department of Mathematics, for inspiring other members of faculty and students of the department. Thank you, ma'am. I thank the chief guest of this event, Mr. Mohan Nagaraj, for his inspiring keynote address on the topic 5G, Internet of Things and Mathematics. He has explained the journey to 5G in 40 years of mobile network evolution, also what is IoT and its applications, and how the mathematics is used in IoT in a simplified manner. We can understand very well, sir. It was very nice. Thank you, sir. I extend my sincere thanks to the other faculty members of our department, ERP team, and technical assistants of our college. I would like to thank the participants for their dynamic participation in this FDP. Also, my sincere gratitude to everyone for making this event a dignified one. Thank you very much. Stay home, stay safe.
Thanks so much, madam.